When I finally arrived to college, my father got really dark towards me. Like any deadbeat, 18 is the year they salivate for. And like a carnivorous animal seeing meat for the first time, any veil of respect he had for me, my intelligence, and my future went right down the drain. "You're an adult now," became his favorite quote for a child that by four he claimed should call him. Our relationship was so defined as much by how, when, and if my dad showed up for me compared to when my mom did. No matter what her review or criticism, including of my drumming, my mother did not miss my moments. It was a cabaret, and I was singing Brooklyn's Raven, a gorgeous opus to rebirth, something I would do a lot in life. Like I said, I always excelled in singing and acting, and data recovery has helped me to see in writing as well. This was the most hidden skill to me, in part because it is just what I used to excel at work or school, or in essence, with others. But singing and acting was how I excelled at being me and publicly. My dad decided to be a no show, choosing he would rather bed rot than see me. In essence, no excuse, no show. The song was technically difficult, but I breezed by its notes to notice my mother crying in the front row and my grandmother holding her. Seeing my mother cry has always been weird, in part because she fought hard not to do it in front of me, and witnessing it did not actually equate an acknowledgement of its reality. Yet these tears were not of pain, they were of pride. This time my mother was on a gray folding chair, bumbling in tears of joy, because I was not simply impressive, I was inspirational, and undeniably so. I felt so human, I was superhuman, ironically. And that is what the stage does to me and why I'm blessed to be on it. The crowd gave me a standing O, and my grandmother could not stop kissing me as if I was gold turned into chocolate, edible, special, and all hers. Three generations of women celebrating each other despite the men that convinced themselves we had no value. All right, let's discuss. Let's heal. So, if you heard in the band, part one, um, I talk about my mother. One of the most difficult things about my family was, and it's something that I'm writing in a future episode. I thought about it. It's called, the episode is going to be called Just Net. But one of the things about my family is you had to be excellent to do something. You had to really, really excel. And that particular rule was absolutely imposed on the women more than the men. It's this weird thing we did where we were waiting for the women to be sinful and waiting for the men to be saintly. And I say that in that there was such a level of harshness and prejudice and pressure on the women to not only measure up but excel in virtue, excel in, if men made a mess, excel at cleaning it. Whereas I feel like we were always waiting for the men to actually be good. If they were the providers, we were waiting for them to provide. If they were going to be kind, we were waiting for that moment. You know, it was such a weird dynamic, such a weird swish. And it happened with my father mostly, like this kind of lie, lie, lie. One day I'm going to be good. One day I'm going to be good. One day I swear, I swear, I swear. And it's one of the reasons why it has affected me so much, the potential of him having more families and me having more siblings. This kind of, who was this guy? It's so weird to see somebody have so many masks and at the same time really just have one face. And my father was a deadbeat. And it's this weird thing of kind of, I lived so much of my life not calling things what they are. Don't call a spade, even though it stabs you. And it has affected me in that I really have chosen to enter bad situations, bad relationships, bad dynamics, because if you dim down the words, you are dimming down the situation, period. And it's not, it's kind of like, I always say this: it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, call it chicken energy. This, you're dimming down the words to dim down the behavior. And I think it was just so normal for me not to call bad actually bad and weird actually weird. and dysfunctional actually dysfunctional. Like we had to make dysfunctional functional. At least it has the word on the back end, right? And then you add on, if you are dimming down a person's bad behavior, it's to, you also dim down their consequences, in part because you want them to avoid it. You're trying to avoid your shame that this person is behaving badly towards you. And in turn, you take away the consequences they should pay for behaving badly towards you. And it was this weird thing of kind of growing up and watching my father be absolutely horrible, like just hair in the drain, just clogging people's lives, arteries, mental health, and actually getting better, like getting richer, going traveling more, doing it's like the more we spiritually denied he was evil, the more he materially bettered. And I think that just is not by chance. And I think that's one of the reasons why oppression is really difficult to talk about, because the whole point of oppression is to spiritually make somebody so small that materially you get better than them. You make them so unworthy of what they have that you take it and you run off to make a mansion. You call them lazy and they build your mansion and you live in it, despite the fact that you had no involvement of in its construction. Coughs America. And coughs the world, right? Uh, but I literally witnessed that dynamic in a very smaller degree, in a familial degree, in a more communal degree. And it made me kind of like a lamb into slaughter. I think we ask people, there is this pressure to do everything by the time you're 22, like to all just Billie Eilish our way into success. Be astronomically talented, astronomically lucky, astronomically hardworking, astronomically famous. Like it just nothing balanced, nothing grounded, absolutely big. And we just like there are people who are there are more people entering their 40s that don't know love, that don't know a proper economy, that don't even know a dream achievement. Like those are old standards for a new world that is very hard to achieve materially in, which is why I think a lot of people are being pushed to have these spiritual assessments because you're 44 and you're living with your mom and you're trying to save money to get that house, but then it involves maintenance, it involves like all these different layers. And you're like, I need to be happy now because if I'm not happy, I'm not working as hard as I should. But working hard does make me unhappy because it all just feels like fruitless to one day become fruitful. And what I felt in terms of my family and kind of, I wish something that I've learned is I wish we would have just called the spade a spade. We never talked. It was this TikTok trend about like the Thanksgiving table where the kids sit, but there's always one adult with them because we always have to watch for the skeevy uncle. And it's like, well, why didn't we just, but God forbid anybody talked about the skeevy uncle and how skeevy he was. That was just murmurs. And I have the tendency in my family to say the quiet part out loud. And I didn't realize that I was asking, I thought I was, I don't think it was seen as innocent as it was intended. I just thought I don't say something's wrong to somebody without having pure hope faith that they will get better and that we will get better and that they will treat me better so I can enjoy them more. Like I don't call out things without believing there's some form or potential of a redemption arc. Because for me, if I get quiet, it's because I'm done. If I walk away, it's because it's over. And I don't have any hope for you. I don't have any hope for you in my life. I don't have any hope for you and me as an us. So I think one of my biggest mistakes in um in past relationships was this kind of you don't say what you feel, you're not clear. I do. What I'm just not listened to. And if I have to repeat, reframe, it's because the person has chosen to ignore me, even though they're with me. And that was the dynamic with my father. Kind of, and it was an episode of Lost, like this kind of, he's not a loser, he's just lost. He's not evil, he just doesn't know how to do better. And that made me walk into a lot of bad dynamics and situations where clearly I was being hurt. Clearly, I was being diminished, and clearly, I would end up being abandoned. But I saw somebody do horrible things and cause so much harm merely because he existed on this earth and land better. He landed better for it. So I just didn't register. And I don't think my mother thought that she was normalizing evil. I think she thought, and it's such an MO for the women in her family, that it's like, I would rather my daughter think she's hypersensitive than her father hyper evil, because in that scenario, she gets to keep a dad. What she didn't realize is that in the other scenario where she just said decided to call me hypersensitive, I lost me. I either keep my dad or I lose me. And that was the thing about my father. You either lost your mental health to love him, or you kept your mental health and you didn't love him, because he just was a challenge. And when I say deadbeat, when I say evil, I say that for all abuse victims in terms of just acknowledging the power of words and kind of making those steps to denormalize bad behavior. Because at the end of the day, yes, he was evil, but he had a life. He lived it. He chose to waste it. I think it's wasteful to cause so much harm and enjoy it. I think it's weird to consistently be malicious and then but play victim. I just think that's not the key to a happy life, but I don't think my father wanted to be happy. I think he just wanted to look it. And I wanted to be it. And I didn't realize that when I called out what was beneath the surface, like I said, I was asking for accountability, but I didn't realize it because I thought if you're trying to look happy, it's because you're trying to be it. But for some people like my dad, they're only looking happy because they can't be it. It's just not possible for them. If all if the only way you could look like a good person is by consistently lying and plotting, you're not only not a good person, but you're certainly not a good person that feels good. You just don't feel it. You're not it and you don't feel it. And by the time I was 18, it was just this absolute veil drop. Or maybe it was because my father was never good to me. But when I was 18, he got really, really bad with me. It was like I was a fart in the elevator. I cannot stand that girl. And I was doing the cabaret. And yeah, my dad didn't show up. Um, but I think this episode is really a juxtaposition to in the band and this moment of not only me excelling, but my mother reveling in my talent and my grandmother supporting her, and all three of us having this real hope for my future and in turn our future of just, it was so crazy to how my father didn't respect me and didn't love me and didn't see any worth to me, despite the fact that I technically was what he wanted, somebody that saw his evil and was willing to love him. That's why I really do. I love the story of God and Lucifer because my father was very Luciferian and I'm very godly. And I'm a good human being. He was a bad human being. But I understand why God had to banish Lucifer. And I understand why so many of us as abuse victims, it takes us a while to realize that we're being abused, in part because of that. I don't want to call the spade a spade energy, and that it really is the death of hope. And right around 18 began the process of my father. I think my father's abuse lasted so long because he ran on the hope that he would be good. And my God, he called my family all the time for prayers, for money. And it was like one day he's going to be good to us. He's just being bad to himself. And that's why he's bad to us. And then he got good and he became evil. And it was gut wrenching. And that moment, I felt like it was three women, three generations of women celebrating themselves and celebrating each other and celebrating how they've shown up for each other, despite the men that really convinced themselves that we were worthless. My father did nothing but hurt and really thought I was a loser. Did nothing in his life but harm women, disappoint them, abandon them, at least once. Because that was the thing. My father, leave, come back. I called you a stupid bitch that day, but in a few weeks, if you please me, I might say you're a good kid. That kind of energy, that chaos. And that chaos matters because you don't stay in abusive relationships if there aren't instances of good. But you leave them once those instances are gone. And when I turned 18, that's when the instances were leaving. It was like this finish line. I made it. You're done, kid. I got the money, got the prayers, loser. And this moment was really special to me because as a child, if your father tells you you're useless and worthless in actions and eventually words, you feel it. And when I was on stage and when I am on stage, all that leaves. It's this moment of you feel so human that you're superhuman. You feel so basic that you feel godly. It's almost like God is simple. God, there's a moment in the Bible when, they ask who God is. I am. It's why they say manifestation rituals. You should say, I am winning. I am happy. I am love. And you say it every day until you actually are it, or you vibe in the frequency that makes your surroundings become it. And I love this moment. I love this moment because my mother never, very, very, very rarely compliments me. I think I've heard way more criticisms from my mother than I have I love you. And our dynamic kind of runs on, I love you. I show up. But this was a moment where it wasn't just she showed up, it was how she showed up. And she was so proud of me and she cried. And we were celebrating each other despite so many instances of the men in our life, even fellow women in our family. Because I think that's the thing about our family too. And I think it happens in general with abuse victims. I think it's really hard for somebody who was so harmed to even imagine they are harmful. My father was convinced that his mother was such a horrible mother there was no way he was a horrible person. And I think that this moment between my mother and my grandmother, it almost erased the concept of harm. We were too happy. We were too hopeful. And it was so beautiful that we let ourselves be that. Because what I was trying to say is not just in the men, but also in terms of the women. You think that because you're being abused by someone, you can't be abusive to someone else. And I think the women in my family were particularly vicious towards other women, subconsciously so, because there was almost this unwritten clause, and Latinidad can be known for its machismo, of not going for the men, right? Even if they fail us, even if they abuse us, even if they F with us, because if we call it out, it might get worse. And either way, it's not going to change. But then you judge the little girls for not cleaning right, even though the boys are playing games. Then you judge your sister for not showing up for you, but your dad doesn't. Your husband is barely home. It's kind of like this, we project onto the ones we know who will stay because we don't have the balls to confront the ones that abandon us. Because if we confront them on abandoning us, they might either going to show up to punish us or they're going to stop showing up at all. And there was this immeasurable kind of, I can't be alone, despite the fact that I'm so lonely in their company, in his company. And yeah, I think I don't, when I look at the world, I don't think we heal. I just think we reshape wounds. I think we reshape them to have new faces and new energies and new, but we don't heal the core. Like humanity has a real problem of projecting and generalizing, and it sucks because I think what abuse does, and oppression is abuse, repression is abuse, depression is abuse, and abuse of self. I think what all that does is it makes it so hard to even know you, let alone be you. I'm so surprised by how much my father's abuse affected me in being myself, but also like, I don't know me. I'm trying to re-know me, relearn about me. Because it's like if somebody calls you stupid every day, what your response to them is to either get quieter because you don't want to say something stupid, but then also this over eagerness to be the wisest person ever when all we're doing is going to McDonald's to pick up a burger. It's this like, it's almost, it makes you, one of the things that really frustrates me is that it's such an irrational thing to do that it turns you irrational. Like I should not be Mrs. Wise Guru to a man, let alone my dad, who's always calling me stupid. Hello, but it was almost like a compensation. I have to compensate for what he lacks by pretending I lack, and that's why I've entered so many poor dynamics. And I think this episode, what was so important to me about that moment, beyond the fact that I love to sing and act, beyond the fact that I felt superhuman in allowing myself to be human, was just there's something so simple and unmessy about enjoying each other. And that night we enjoyed each other. Afterwards, we ate and we laughed. It was a good night. And so many of I think in my family, there was this concept of we'll ignore the volatility, we'll ignore the anger, we'll ignore the sadness because we laugh. Like I was raised in a tremendously funny family, funny household. I mean, these are funny people, great cooks. So it was like food and fun. What? But there was sadness and there was darkness and there was volatility and there was jealousy and there was anger that would come out in these random outbursts that then everybody would ignore. It's like being in an earthquake and seeing that a wall fell down and totally acting like there's not rubble in the middle of our living room. Anyway, it's like, anybody want to watch Netflix? And I'm like, hello. There's like a brick. There are bricks all over. So, oh, should we watch something in Hulu? Like just this ignoring, because the other side was real fun and real breath, but there was a lot of lack of it. And on that night, we were breathing. And I didn't, it didn't hurt me that my dad didn't show up. It didn't hurt me that he made it clear he didn't want to show up. It didn't hurt me that it came from this idea, this misconception that I was the one that had no value because he had stolen the value of so many other women. But he was just another misogynist. He wasn't a king. And on that night, I felt like we allowed ourselves to be goddesses. I'm really just trying to hammer the magic of something that in perspective, I think I'm learning right now, which is let go of the toxic. If they don't want to show up for you, that means something, but stop asking them. And I didn't realize, now that I talk about it in perspective, what's so crazy is that I've asked a lot of people who blatantly didn't show up for me. I've stayed asking them to show up. And I love in the ways I haven't been loved. I didn't have a lot of people show up for me. And if they did, it was not pure or, not without criticism. And it's something that I marvel at a lot when I look back on my relationships, how I walked away so judged by my partners for being so people pleasing and so overwhelmingly generous and good. It was like when they milked the cow, suddenly she was dry. It's not like she ever had anything in her. And that night, it was just peace. And it was wonderful. And as I talk about it, I hope I'm going to keep that lesson. If you feel peace with people, they are the ones you keep inviting. Don't invite somebody that makes you feel you have to shapeshift in their presence. Don't invite somebody that doesn't want to see you sing. Sing in your moment. Check out daddyrecovery.com. Check out theandrewreviewsitall.com and check out Heidi Dean on all music platforms. Gotta love ya.